Footium Season 1 is in the books, Season 2 is right round the corner. This is everything and anything you need to know. Welcome back to the channel, let's get it. As I said in the intro, welcome back to the channel, Moza here, and this is a Season 1 recap, a Season 2 preview, and a full guide for everything and anything you need to know about Footium. Things have been flying the past few weeks on this game. I'm really enjoying it. A lot of people are really enjoying it as well. While it won't be fully positive, there are still things, as you'd expect, they need to work on, to fix, to adapt and change. Overall, pretty positive experience, and I'll talk you through tactics, training, transfers. We'll look at the big events that have happened, like legendary player auctions and like the new era clubs that have come in. I'll cover everything and anything you need to know, but let's get started right from the very square one. When you buy a club, what do you need to know? The basics. So, to keep things simple, when you buy a club in Footium, you do not get the players with it. Every club does have academy players that you can sign. There's 5 of them at the start of every season. First thing to bear in mind, there may not be 5 if you buy a club on the market. The previous owner may have already signed some or all of those academy players. You do need to pay a minting fee to sign them. It's usually cheaper to mint academy players than to buy on the marketplace, although you will see deals from time to time that can change that. So first consideration, when you buy a club, you are also going to have to buy a squad of players. Where do you get started with it? Well, I'll tell you what I do, and without trying to sound too big-headed, it's worked. So this is a tried and tested and proven approach to it. There are several other ways you can look at it as well, but this is how my 3 clubs all won their leagues in Season 1. I have 33 players per squad. Why? Because that's 3 players per position. I stick to one main formation that I can adapt slightly depending on the opposition. We'll cover tactics shortly. But once you have a tactic you want, if you already have players try to pick a tactic that fits your best players, you want to try, if possible, and have 3 players for every position, because with that, one of those 3 players can be in training. Training will lose condition, and we'll cover training shortly. But when that player is in training and cannot play, you have 2 players you can swap in and out on the same position. It generally works well, and then when the player that has been in training recovers condition, they can jump back in to that rotation, and one of the players that has been playing can go over to training and get their turn, improving their maximum, or improving their current rating towards the maximum rating. If you do not want to go with that many players, you may be on a budget and you can't get to that level, or simply you just want to keep things a bit more manageable. Understand, totally understand. The way to approach it in that case is to make sure you have 22 players, so 2 players for every position, and then a few extra players that can cover multiple positions. So say a centre back that may also cover left back and right back. Centre mids usually cover attacking and defensive mid as well. You have wingers that can play left forward or left wing back, as well as left wing. There's a few different variations, but the absolute core, the minimum you will need without considering training, is 22 players, 2 players for every position in your formation. So at the start of Season 1, every player started with 4 usable training points. The way training works is if you have a player who is rated 30, for example, and they have 4 available rating points, you can use those to add to that player's rating. Every time you put a player into training, they lose 25% of their condition, so they need to be fit enough to actually go in the first place. Their rating will go up 1 point as a result of that training session. The time it takes for that session to complete varies depending on how many times that player has trained in the past. I have here a graph that I put together after a bit of research in the early days of Season 1. This, as far as we know, still applies, so use this as your guide. That will give you an idea of how long a training session will take to complete. At the end of that training session, the player will begin to recover condition again, having lost 25% of their fitness from that training session. They will not recover condition during training, so something really important to point out. If they have 4 available points to use, you will only be able to use 3 of them at a given time, because they have to be minimum 45% condition to start training. They cannot drop below 20% condition in the game. So you can spam 3 training sessions very quickly if you time things right. You'll go from 100 down to 75, down to 50, down to 25, and you'll now need to wait to use that 4th training session until they've recovered from 25% up to 45% condition. This is why having 33 players in a squad works, because you don't need to worry about a player in that position that you've just sent to the training ground for 6-7 days basically to gain 4 training points. The only way after the initial training points are being used, which at this point in game most have, you very rarely find players that have got 4+ training points unused on them at this time. The only way to unlock more is to play games. Every time a player plays a certain number of minutes, they unlock another training point. They can then be used to increase their rating by a single point. If they get to the full bar on their card, that tells you they've used all their potential points and they will not improve any further. So that card there's a good guide I'll link down below, shows you initially the colour, how many training points have already been used. Secondly, how many are unlocked and ready to be used. And thirdly, how many are left to unlock through games. The easiest way to break it down is by looking at a player, looking at that bar at the bottom with the numbers already indicated, and then you can plan ahead from that point on. One last thing to point out on training: legendary players need to play less minutes to unlock training points. Rare players need to play less minutes to unlock. So legendaries are the lowest number of minutes needed, followed by rares, then followed by everyone else. Common, bronze, silver, gold, all need to play the same number of minutes to unlock a training point. Again, it is covered in the written guide that I have linked down below. So, we've covered training. Let's get into tactics, into the meat and bones of a football management game. Footium has pretty accurately, under the hood, got to a system where different formations are more effective against other formations. I will give you a little bit of fact and a little bit of theory at this point. I have personally held beliefs, having played this through beta testing and now through Season 1, that I can give myself an advantage in these things. When you play games, there is one game every day at the same time. You'll see it listed when you go into your fixtures in game. You have the choice of formation to play and lineup to put out, starting 11 with your substitutes. You can make in-game changes, you can make in-game substitutions as well. So that in itself can be powerful. You can change the outcome of a game by actively managing. You can also change it the wrong way, so be very careful. You don't want to throw away what you've already got. So into the tactics here. Basically, what you want to do is match up with your opponent as best you can, while also giving yourself every advantage. In Season 1, it was nice and simple. It was just about the players, the formation, and the mentality. You can go ultra defensive, balanced, attacking, and ultra attacking. If you go balanced, it's a good place to start a game and you can adjust from there. if you choose a defensive or ultra defensive mentality, your defensive players and goalkeeper will tire quicker. So bear that in mind. The same vice versa for attacking and ultra attacking. Your attacking players will tire quicker and be less effective as the game goes on, condition wise. My personal opinion is you should never use ultra defensive or ultra attacking unless it's the last 5 minutes of a must-win game. I wouldn't even think about using them from the start of a game. I always start balanced and adjust from there. Even if I'm not going to be there actively managing the game, balanced gives you the best of both worlds. Going attacking against a formation that has been set up to combat you can be deadly for you. That team, if you think of it in a counter-attacking sense, could be on defensive, taking less risks. Attacking generally means take more risks. If you take more risks against a team that is well set up to counter-attack you, you're in trouble. So just be wary, don't always be attacking, especially if you're playing against a side that looks to be better rated overall or better set up overall. In terms of the formations, again, this is where my opinion will come through. This hasn't officially been laid out by the team, but certain positions are more effective against their corresponding positions on the other side. Let me give you an example. So one of my teams plays a 3-4-3. In a 3-4-3, in attack, you have one centre forward, one left forward, and one right forward. Very attacking. That works really well against a back three or a back five. The reason for that, and again, this is my opinion, my theory, left forwards match up against right backs. Right backs only exist in back fours, so a back four is a good way to counter a 3-4-3. If that left forward does not have a right back to cover them, automatically they should be more effective and give you more of a chance in attack. That same theory also seems to work with left wingers and right wingers. If they are up against a wing back on the other side, they seem to be less effective. However, if you're playing against a back four, for example, and you have a left winger, there is no wing back there, that winger should be, in theory, more effective in space without a man to counter them. The reason I think this is not just through testing and through just general vibes of the game. The main reason is I've noticed when you play an attacking midfielder in the hole behind a striker, they are so much more effective when there is no DM there. When there is a DM there, you do not get as many chances. It may be fact, it may be fiction, but that is what I've found in the match engine. The attacking midfielder is such an undervalued position in this game, especially for 4-2-3-1 formation. I've used it to great success with Penn City. That attacking mid in there, when they do not have a DM to cover them, seems to run the show. That's what I've found. It's up to you to go and find your own theories, but there's a little starter for 10. Give it a go and see what you think. Lastly, condition wise, in your tactics, I would not be starting players that are below 90% condition. Just personal preference. You can see by the colour scale that the colour changes when they hit 85% to a lighter green rather than the full green. That's there for a reason. That's not just aesthetic. That's telling you that there is going to be a drop off in performance. I don't want to have that drop off in performance. I would rather play a player that's less rated but higher condition than have someone under 85% start a game. So 90% is just personal preference. You can go between 85 and 90 if you wish and make substitutions in game. Usually the substitutions I make are purely condition based. As soon as someone approaches 70% and is about to dip below that, I want to substitute them. You do only have 3 subs at this moment in time in Footium. Use them wisely. Generally, I'd recommend subbing off your most tired players, get fresh legs on. Even if they are slightly worse rated, I think it is worth the payoff. Oh, just before we move on, if you're asking what formations seem to be popular in-game, I would say 3-4-3 for the back 3, 4-2-3-1 for the back 4, and 5-2-3 for the back 5, or the back 3 with wing backs. The 5-2-3 seems to be the most popular formation in the game. However, what I said earlier on is vulnerable to an attacking midfielder. If you can match up numbers wise in midfield and have an attacking midfielder thrown in, you can generally overcome it. Little tip. So, covered training, covered tactics, covered in-game changes. Next up, let's have a look at the transfer market and planning ahead with your squad. So with these players, I use a spreadsheet, which again, I have linked a version of below if you want to have a go and create your own. You need to bear in mind a few things about these players in your squad. They will retire at the age of 32, so 31 will be their final season, and they'll have an icon beside their name to let you know that they will retire at the end of that season. Also, if you have a lot of younger players, naturally they'll be able to play for longer. They'll usually have more potential to unlock as well. If you have a few players in one position that are all 17, 18, 19 years old, you need to factor that in as well for training, because ideally you want to train all three up. My approach is usually to try and have 2 players with good potential and 1 more experienced head for every position. It doesn't always work like that, but that would be the ideal, where the experienced head doesn't need to train particularly anymore. They can be the constant in that rotation in the squad, where 1 can be playing and 1 can be training. In theory, that is the way it should work. As I say, it doesn't always work, but it seems to be the way to try and approach things. So with all that said, we'll go to the transfer market just now, and I'll give you an idea of how to search for players, how to try and find bargains. You will always have a chance of finding a bargain in the Discord, and the player want to buy, want to sell, want to trade channels. They have now been filtered down into common players, into bronze players, and into silver and above. So silver, gold, rare and legendary players you will find in there. Perhaps not legendary players too often, given that one just sold for $5,500 US. That's something, we'll get to that. But yeah, into the marketplace on OpenSea. Important security detail here. If anyone ever messages you asking to send them a player directly, to send money directly, to use an external website, don't do it. Use OpenSea for every purchase and every sale of a player. If you do not use OpenSea, you are responsible if you get scammed or if you lose players or clubs. It's a harsh thing to say, but it has to be said. With Footium achieving some success at this moment in time, scammers are on it very, very closely at this moment in time, as they are with any successful Web3 game. Look after yourself, keep all your passcodes secret. The easiest way I can explain this is if you are buying something on eBay and the person asked you for your bank account number, why would you give it? Sure, they can't do anything with it, but why would you give them that information? So if they're asking you for wallet details, why? They don't need it. Just buy and sell on OpenSea. It's listed there, they can make an offer on it. Just have a sense check for what these people are asking you. If they're asking for information they don't need, take a step back, ask one of the community helpers, ask one of the team in the Discord for a sense check. It generally is the best thing to do, rather than regretting things that you make mistakes on down the line. Also, there are impersonators for myself, for JG, for other well-known buyers and sellers of players in the Discord, generally in the game. There's one in particular that keeps trying to be me, which is very frustrating. However, if you are in any doubt if it is the real person messaging you, firstly check their handle, they're at Generally that will be a dead giveaway if it's an impersonator. Secondly, go into the Discord, click on that person directly and message them directly just to make sure it's the same person you're speaking to. If not, it's probably the best thing you've done to double check before trying to make any deals. So, with all that in mind, into the marketplace we go. If you are looking for players, don't be too worried about all the filters that I'm showing you here on the left hand side of OpenSea. The main ones you need to worry about are age range. You're either going to be looking for someone 25 and under, so just selecting all of those, or if you're looking for an experienced head, try not to go 31 and just get a guy for one season. Try to look for someone at 29 or 30 that at least you'll get a couple of seasons out of. Other than that, you'll be looking at rarity. So are they needing to be bronze, for example? Bronze would be rated 40 and above as a current rating. When you get to Division 7, Division 6, that's where you're going to start seeing more bronzes. Division 8, bronze is a very, very good thing to have. It is mainly commons in Division 8 unless someone has been spending a war chest and gone over the top for it. And other than that, there's all sorts of ways you can filter down. My main one would be position. I specifically look per position to see what is out there on the marketplace for a given rarity. In my case, it's usually bronze. I'll look to see younger bronzes with plenty of potential still to go. I'll look at older bronzes who I'll still get a few years out of, that will likely be cheaper because they're older. People pay a premium for academy players that have a lime green banner around their card. That will disappear after their first training session, bear in mind. So if you have an academy player with that border there, that only lasts until they go to training for the first time. Potential is possibly overvalued in my opinion, but that's not the game's fault though, that's the owner's fault. Owners pay a premium for that potential without planning ahead on how best to unlock it and how to train it, which is where the spreadsheet comes in and where 3 players per position comes in. Whatever approach you find works for you, go with it, but just bear in mind it is useless having a squad of 30 odd players with 25 potential if they're not going to reach their potential, if they're all going to try and cram into 2 training spots at any given time. It needs to be balanced. You'll need to have some older heads as well as the young ones that can go in and get trained up as you go along. One last little tip. The most valuable position in game right now are the most 2 valuable positions in game right now are centre back and centre midfield. Centre forward time to time can be as well, and there's not as many of them, but most formations only use 1. So centre backs and centre midfielders will be at a premium price on the marketplace. There is a slight hack you can use to try and find a cheaper version of a player who might not be seen as a centre mid right now, but could train to be a centre mid, or might not be seen as a centre back right now, could be a right back or a left back, but could train up to be a centre back. Let me show you. So on these filters here, you'll see if you scroll down there are individual position filters as well. If you click on centre back for this example, and you want a centre back who is a minimum say 30 rated, change that 1 to 30 and click apply. At that point you'll get your list of players that will come through as normal. You'll notice that for example here there may be defensive midfielders that show up in that search. This is a good way to find a cheaper player. In this example, assuming this has made it to the video, my search has brought up the cheapest player being a 39 rated defensive midfielder who is a 37 rated centre back. 2 rating points lower as a centre back, but because he's seen as a defensive midfielder, he's put up for a cheaper price. You can pick him up, you can train him as a centre back, and then you've got exactly what you wanted for a bargain basement price. So that's all the core aspects of Footium covered in terms of building your squad, buying players, setting up tactics, formation, approach, and in-game changes, as well as training up your players to make them better. Other than that, little things just to bear in mind that can take you from potentially on the verge of promotion to going ahead and winning a league. You can scout ahead for your opponents. I can't show this right now because the game has updated to Season 2, but if you go into your fixtures, you can click on the team you're about to play, click on their previous fixture, you'll see their formation, you'll get an idea of if they're active or not that way. Generally, if managers are not active, you'll see players out of position all over the place, low ratings, and they're what is known as a zombie team. That gives you more of a chance of getting points on the board. They can still get a result, so you still need to be actively managing your side as best you possibly can. Do not assume you will beat a zombie. People have done that before in Season 1 and been very angry afterwards. It is not a guaranteed 3 points. But also, while we're having a look at the leagues, if you go into your league on the left hand side and click on prize pool, you can see in there how much your team is slated to win if they are in a certain position. Those prize pools will update as the season goes on, as they did for Season 1. Every player sold on the transfer market partially boosts the transfer the prize pool, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. So it's a really well balanced economy. The other thing that I really like that the Footium team have done, as explained in the blog post that is linked below, not all of the money goes into the current season prize pool, it also tops up the seasons to come. So 2-3 seasons down the line, those prize pools are already being prepared before we reach that point. So assuming that the market stays healthy, the game stays sustainable. Whether it's going to go mad in terms of the size of prizes, who knows, but I'll show you just now on screen what happened when I claimed my prizes from Season 1. You'll see there's 4 teams there. It gives you a breakdown of how much they each got for winning their respective leagues. I personally think it was a really decent prize pot for Season 1, given that probably half of the teams in this at the moment I don't think are fully actively managed. Sometimes managers drop in now and again and make a change here or there, and every daily managed team tends to do better, but only probably just under half of the clubs in Footium have a proper active management behind them. So now that we've gone through that, let's cover everything that's happened. Between Season 1 and Season 2, there have been a couple of changes announced. Firstly, chemistry has arrived. So when you go to pick your team now, you'll see that there is a chemistry rating for your team. If you pick a full team of normal players in their positions, you will see they have great chemistry. That's what you're aiming for. Certain numbers of players out of position, or certain number of players that aren't comfortable with what you're asking them to do, will bring great down to good, down to okay, down to bad. You want to avoid that. Chemistry is a multiplier of how well your team will perform in matches. Having less than great chemistry is just hurting yourself. Don't do it. You're better to change a formation to get players into the comfortable positions than you are to try and shoehorn players in and drop off on that chemistry rating. Something else to bear in mind, if you're fortunate enough to have rare players or legendary players, those guys give you a boost to chemistry. One rare player changes great to awesome. I've not seen the change when it's a legendary player as yet, but they give you a bigger boost being legendary players. Also being very expensive. Out of my price range, maybe one day. Something else you will notice with these rare players and with these legendary players, they have more potential points to improve. So normal, common, bronze, silver, gold players have maximum 25 potential points per player. The rares and the legendaries can go all the way up to 40, and sometimes with legendaries just above 40 as well. That's why they unlock the points quicker through minutes and games, because they've got more to use. And it also means that these guys can get, for rares they generally get into the high 80s as a maximum rating. For legends they can get into 90s all the way up to the high 90s. So that's why the legendary players are so scarce. They are the best players in the game if used right and if trained right. There is still an element of having to play the game well to make them hit their full potential, which I like. You can't just buy your way to success, at least in this instance with Footium. Rare players, very much the same. So you can find rare players usually for a little bit cheaper than these legends have gone for. If you train them right, you could have a superstar on your hands who isn't too much below what a fully trained legend would be, but for the price point you can really challenge up there with the best and potentially get them in at a certain price, give them their full training, and then sell them on for a profit. You can obviously do that with normal players as well. If your common player who's rated 35 gets to the rating of 40, they will change from common to bronze when you update their details on OpenSea. So you can improve your players and upgrade your players as they go through the different levels. 40 for bronze, 55 for silver, 70 for gold. If you can take a player from one rarity level up to the next rarity level, generally their price seems to get a boost. It's the old shiny thing I want that type scenario, and people will pay for a bronze player. So in terms of other changes, there we've alluded to a couple of times was a legendary player auction, which may still be going on by the time you watch this video. They are selling these players in batches. I believe there was 12 legends this time around that were released on the auction side of things. Again, all through OpenSea, just fetching a variety of crazy prices as well. And really interesting to see how high these guys go and where they go to as well, to the biggest teams at the top levels of Footium. In terms of academies, you do have a chance to get a rare in your academy at any level. You will never find a legendary player, they will only ever be auctioned between seasons. Rare players can be produced through academies in game. By their name, they are rarer to find. You may get lucky and find one. Because they are by nature a rare player, their minting cost is different. The minting costs have changed for Season 2. They've come down slightly in ETH terms because the price of ETH has gone up, which if you hold some is a good thing, obviously. But the pricing is there and that is consistent for all of Season 2. So it will always cost you whatever the minting price is for that division to mint a player. For the rares, they are always one set price at the top of that chart there. Other than that, it's just a case of jumping in, finding out more as we go along. Playing the game will teach you so much when it comes to football management simulations, and Footium is no different. All these theories, all these kind of findings I have, it purely comes from playing the game actively and by speaking to other people, mainly in Discord. There are always very passionate debates in there, which is a good thing. People saying what the future direction should be, what should come in, what should be down the line, what the focuses should be. At this moment in time, my personal opinion is that Footium should be focused on adding more complexity season by season to the match engine experience. So adding chemistry this season is a good thing. It's something else to factor into your decision making. It shouldn't be easy to pick 11 players and win a game. You should have several factors building into that fact. Chemistry being added is a nice little extra to throw into the mix. I am desperate to see stats come in. We still don't have a top goal scorers leaderboard. We still don't have ways to track appearances, ways to track ratings of players in-game. We don't know how well a player is performing at this moment in time. So these little absolutely mandatory aspects of Football Manager need to find their way into Footium. I'm hoping it won't take too long for them to find their way in, especially because they need to be accurate. They can't just be there as a throwaway number, for example a rating out of 10. They need to reflect what's actually happening. The match engine itself is solid, is really good, given the complexity of the calculations and given that you can make in-game changes and instantly change the direction and ultimate end point of the match. Works really well. There are still a couple of commentary bugs which you expect. It's just an easy fix in the coding to say that a goalkeeper hasn't scored when you have to look for a random player to score a goal. It's one pure example. Every so often it gets a bit glitchy on the match simulation, but again, easy fixes. Long term, the prospects for Footium are really good, really good. Assuming that the community continues to grow and at least the people already in the community stick around and continue to play it, that will be what makes or breaks this game going forward into future seasons and future years. I see no reason why there would be any drop off. Everyone that is involved seems to be really invested in it, really enjoying their time, myself included. Continue to add in new bells and whistles, continue to improve the game experience. More people will come and things will keep chugging along, I'm very sure. But I hope that this video has been useful to you. If it has, please do let me know in the comments your thoughts on my theories or anything you've picked up that I may not have covered, any opinions you may have as well. I will try and do roundup videos like this, obviously a little bit shorter between every season, talking about things we've learned, things coming down the line into the new season, new parts of the game, and anything that may have changed in the metas as we go along. I'll also try and throw in a mid-season, more club-based roundup of how my teams are doing, what I'm doing, how my approach is changing as we go up the ladder. This season I have moved all these teams up, so I have a Division 7 in Penn City and 2 Division 5s in Highop and also in Tam Town. You may have noticed Stone Stanley were in my list of clubs. That's not my club, I was looking after that for someone else, just to explain that, so that will go back to Lamb at some point ahead of Season 2, just to cover off. I've not forgotten that I had a 4th club. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, I appreciate it as always, and until the next time, good luck on the pitch, we'll see you there.